So how did it go? Were you successful? Let's have a look at my solution now. And for this, I'm still here in Visual Studio Code, and I'll first bring back my panel here and clear this. And with that, we can start with our actual Git logic. I'll keep the instructions right here as long as it's possible so that we can have a look. So the first step, create a new folder and initialize the repository. This is done. I'm in this basics folder here, and I also did the second step already. This instructions text file is already pasted into this folder. But to initialize the repository, we'll run git init like this. This will make this project a git managed project. Therefore, we now have the hidden .git folder containing the actual Git repository, and we now have our working directory with all the files and folders we'll create in here. Now, as I said, step 1 was done by myself already. Therefore, we can now continue with step 3. So we should add a text file named file1 containing any text of our choice. Well, that's quite easy, I guess. So we'll create that file, and I'll call it file1.text, and we could enter some text. Maybe this is our first assignment. Something like this, maybe including the N to write it correctly. So let's save this, and let's now go back to the instructions. This is step 3 done. Now we should create a second text file named file2. Also quite easy, I guess. So we'll create the next file, file2.text. In here, well, still working on the assignment, maybe something like this. So this was also a quick one. Then we should add file1 and file2 to the staging area, but we shouldn't add instructions.text. This means if we would run our basic command we used quite often throughout the course, so git add to add files to the staging area, and now with the dot notation, well, we would add all files we have in here to the staging area. That's actually not the goal, and if we now check the current status of our area, we see that we have 3 untracked files. So our goal will be to only have file1 and file2.text in the staging area. To do this, we run git add, but now not dot, but now we add the individual files we want to add. So in our case, this should be file1.text, now a space, and now file2.text. With this, if we run this command, we don't see any change, of course, because we didn't commit anything. But if we check git status once again, you see that we have 2 files added to the staging area, which is great, and 1 file which is still untracked. So this was exactly our task in, well, point number 5 here. Now we should go back to the first file here, file1, and change the initial text we added there. So let's go back to the file, the tracked file now, and just updated this text maybe. Also don't forget to save this. Now, if we go back to the instructions, we see that we should add all working directory files to the staging area. And now, very important, if we clear this again and run git status, you see that both of these files have changes to be committed, but the problem is that we modified file1 now. So this means if we would just add instructions.text to the staging area and then create the commit, our latest change will not be committed. Therefore, it's important right here to run git add. And now we can either, again, use the individual file names, so file1 text and instructions.text, or we can use git dot in this case, then all files which have untracked changes will be part of the staging area. So let's do this, and maybe including the add. Sorry, this was my bad. Now this is working. So if we clear this once again and run git status, you see we have changes to be committed, everything green in here, so this is all right. Therefore, we can actually continue with our 8th point here, creating the first commit. So let's do this by running git commit. And I can actually drag this up a bit so that you can better see what I'm doing. So let's add a commit and say added initial text files. Okay. If we, for example, check our git log now, we see we created this first commit in here. And if we also run git status, we see nothing to commit, working tree is clean. So I think this was quite successful. I'm running some of these basic commands again here on purpose. Again, this assignment should also revise many of the concepts learned throughout this last module. Now, with that first commit being created, we should create a second branch now named feature, and 2 commands are possible. First, if we run git branch here, we see that we are in the master branch. You can also name this main in the meanwhile. That's a newer convention. In this course, I still want to teach both because, well, master was the old one. So you will see this quite often still. And now we should create a new feature branch. The old command, which is totally valid until today, is git checkout -b, and now the branch name, which would be feature in our case. This would create a new branch based on the latest status of the master branch, including all previous commits, 1 commit in our case. Alternatively, with the introduction of git 2.23, also quite a while ago, we can run git switch -c and now refer to the name that newly created branch should have, so feature. I'll go with this newer command in here because throughout the course we more often use the checkout command. So let's run this command. With this, we created a new branch named feature. Now the next step would be to add a third text file to this branch. Therefore, if we again run git branch, we are already in this feature branch because with this command we created a new one and switched it. If you want to switch branches, you can either run git checkout and then the branch name, so master in our case, to come back to the master, or git switch and then feature here to go back to the feature branch. So all possible. Now we are back in the feature branch. This means we can add a third text file. Let's do this now. File free.txt. Done. And maybe also some dummy text. I was created in the feature branch like this. Now back in the instructions, we should, well, create a new commit. I think we can do this. So we'll just run git add and now the dot notation again. That's totally fine as we want to commit all potential changes here. And now we commit that change and let's say added file free.text. So this is also done. Now we should add this text here. I will be deleted to file free. So let's go to file free once again and add maybe in a new line here. I will be deleted. So let's go back to the instructions. And now we should add this updated file to the staging area. Again, we could run git add dot, but here I'll explicitly refer to this individual file here. So file free.txt. So it's added. It is part of the staging area. Again, with git status, we can easily see this. But now we see that this change is something we don't want to have in our staging area and therefore in our next commit. Therefore, we now want to undo this staged change. Throughout this module, we learned 2 ways to do this, an older way and a newer way. Again, both are totally valid. The older way to undo changes in files which are already in the staging area would be git reset and then the file name, so file free.txt in our case. This would be one alternative. I'll use the newer approach now in this assignment, and this is git restore -- staged. So we want to undo staged changes, and now the staged changes in file free.txt. Let's do this. Okay, we didn't see a lot. If we check out the file now, we see the text is still in there. But if we check out the staging area now, let's see what happened. You see we don't have any stage changes, so it seems to work, but still this change we made is part of that file. Well, and that's due to the fact that we now have to check out this file to go back to the latest commit, which incorporated only, well, this added line in this file. For this, we simply run git checkout and now file3.txt. With this, we see that we updated one path from the index. I'll not dive deeper into this at this point. We had a very close look at this throughout the module. But the important thing now is, with this operation, the change was unstaged, and with checkout now, we finally have our initial state of this file back. So the next task is completed. Let's go back to the instructions. And now we should add the following text. Please add me to the master or main branch. So in case you're working with main branches here, I'll just copy that text now and paste it into file3.txt. So we'll paste it here. And I'll say this is the main branch here because we're working with the main branch. Maybe add a dot. Let's save this. And let's again check out our instructions. Now we should commit this latest change. Well, that's an easy one. We'll just run git add dot again to use the other command. And now commit this, git commit -m edit text to file3.txt, something like this. Let's commit this. So this was successful. And now we should merge the master branch with the feature branch. And afterwards, we should delete the feature branch. So the idea would be here to switch to the master branch, to then merge feature with master, and then delete the feature branch afterwards. So the first thing we have to do is we have to switch or check out the master branch. I'll use the switch command here once again. So git switch master. Now to merge, we always have to refer to the branch we are currently in, and then with the merge command, include the branch that should be merged into this current branch. This means we are currently in the master branch, so our command would be git merge and now feature. So feature should be merged into master. Let's see if this works. Yes, it works. It's a so-called fast forward merge. This will of course be covered in the deep dive module, so in the next module of this course. For the moment, we are just happy that the merge was successful. We can also check this with git log now in our master branch. There you see, this is the merged one. So we added text to file3.txt. This was something we added in the feature branch, which is now also part of the master branch. Let's leave the log now with Q and let's clear this. And let's now, as a final step in this assignment, delete the feature branch. For this, we of course shouldn't be in the branch that should be deleted, which is not the case for us. Therefore, we can run git branch -D now and feature. With this, the feature branch should be deleted. Yes, this worked. So with git branch, we can now see that we only have the master branch, including all our changes that we made. So this was our assignment here. I hope, well, as written down there, that you had fun with the assignment. If you didn't follow exactly my approach, not a big problem. But generally, this would be the way to work through such an assignment. These would be the basic commands used here in a kind of practical application. So with that being finished, now it's time for the Git deep dive. See you in the next module.